Okay, let's dive right into this. We have been asking ourselves forever, right? What makes us us? What is that one thing, that special something, that really makes human beings unique? Well, today we're going to dig into a really fascinating and honestly pretty surprising answer that comes from the world of anthropology.
So, just think about it for a second. What are the classic answers you've always heard? You know, the ones they taught you in school. I bet a few big ideas are popping into your head right now. But, as you're about to see, those ideas, they might not be the whole story. Not even close. So first things first, let's quickly put these popular theories to the test. We're going to see if the lines we love to draw in the sand between us and all the other animals are really as sharp as we think they are. Okay, first up, tool use. The whole idea of Homo faber, man the maker. It's a really powerful image, isn't it? But here's the catch. We are definitely not alone. Chimpanzees use sticks to go fishing for termites. They use stones to crack open nuts. So, as cool as it is, tool use isn't uniquely human. All right, so what about language? Homo loquens, man the speaker. Surely our complex grammar, our ability to tell stories, that has to be it. And look, human language is incredibly sophisticated, no doubt about it. But the basic act of complex communication, using sounds and signals to get a point across, that is happening all over the animal kingdom. Okay, the last big one, fire. Now this feels like a real game changer. Controlling fire let us cook our food, which totally supercharged our brain development. But you know what? Even here, the line gets a little bit fuzzy. Some animals have actually learned to use fires that start naturally, like swooping in to eat smaller critters that got cooked in a forest fire. Now, they don't control it, but they definitely use it. So, if all of these classic definitions have these little asterisks next to them, then what's left? What's the one thing that truly actually kickstarted humanity's unique path? And this is where we get to a really radical idea, an idea championed by the legendary anthropologist Claude Lévi-Strauss. He argued that the real turning point wasn't something we gained, but actually something we lost, a kind of hidden biological shift that changed absolutely everything. Now, to get this, we have to talk about something called the estrus cycle. You probably know it by a more common term, being in heat. For most female mammals, this is the specific time when they're fertile. It's all governed by instinct, and it comes with very, very obvious physical and behavioral signs that basically broadcast to all the males, hey, I'm available. And here it is. This is the bombshell from Lévi-Strauss's work. The single most profound, most important evolutionary change for our species wasn't getting a bigger brain or walking on two legs. It was the complete disappearance of the female estrus cycle. We just lost it. So why was this such a massive deal? Because it meant, for the very first time in our lineage, that sex was completely disconnected from a specific, biologically timed event. It became a constant possibility. It was on the table all year round. And that simple fact completely rewrote the rules for how we interact. You see, this one loss set off an incredible chain reaction. Getting rid of that biological signal didn't just change our mating habits. It literally laid the foundation for society and culture as we know them. Let's just walk through this domino effect, step by step. First, the estrus cycle vanishes. That leads to year-round sexual possibility. This encourages males and females to stick together, forming more stable, permanent family units. But this new setup creates a huge new problem, the potential for constant conflict inside the family. And that leads directly to the final and most crucial step. Humans had to invent a rule, a taboo, to manage this new reality. And that rule was the incest taboo. So get this. The incest taboo wasn't just some vague moral idea that popped up. No, according to Lévi-Strauss, it was a practical, revolutionary invention. It was the very first universal social rule. You can think of it like the foundational software that stabilized the family unit and allowed different families to connect and cooperate, forming bigger and bigger societies. It was the birth of culture with a capital C. Now, this brings up a really interesting question, doesn't it? If humans lost those obvious biological I'm fertile signals that come with an estrus cycle, what took their place? How did we figure out how to communicate attraction and availability in this brand new cultural world? The answer is, well, we invented them. We created an entirely new language of cultural signals. Perfume acts like an artificial pheromone. Makeup, especially the use of red, mimics the natural flush of good health and fertility.
Complicated hairstyles and fashion choices became signals of status, youth, and availability. All of these things we do every single day are, in a weird way, cultural echoes of a biological function we lost a long, long time ago. And this leads us to the final piece of the puzzle. And honestly, it's the most mind-bending idea of them all. It completely flips our entire understanding of how our biology and our culture relate to each other.
So the old view, the one that kind of feels like common sense, is that our nature changed first. We evolved bigger brains, and then that new biology allowed us to create culture. But Levi-Strauss, he flips that whole thing on its head. He suggests that as we started developing early culture, like language, we just didn't need that crude biological signal of estrus anymore. We could just talk to each other. Our new culture made our old biology obsolete.
And that right there is the heart of this whole radical idea. Culture wasn't just a passive side effect of our evolution. It became an active force. It was so powerful that it could literally switch off a fundamental biological program that had been running for millions of years. Culture was actively shaping our evolution.
So, I'll leave you with this thought to chew on. If our uniquely human invention of culture was powerful enough to rewrite our own biology once, what other parts of our nature might it be rewriting right now? And what does that mean for the future of what it even means to be human?
All right, let's dive into one of the most fascinating thinkers of the 20th century, a guy who built his entire career on a pretty wild contradiction. I mean, what do you do when one of the world's most famous explorers actually hates exploring?
Yep, you heard that right. That is the very first sentence of Claude Lévi-Strauss's most famous book. It's a pretty strange thing to say for an anthropologist whose groundbreaking work took him deep into the Amazon rainforest, don't you think?
So, what gives? Why would he say that? Well, to solve this little puzzle, we have to look past the man himself and get into the massive idea he was known for: structuralism. Honestly, it's the key to his entire way of thinking. Lévi-Strauss had this core belief that everything we see on the surface of society, our customs, our myths, our rules, is all being shaped by these deep, invisible structures. She actually joked once that he got the idea from his three mistresses. First up, Marxism. So you know how Karl Marx argued that a society's economy is like this hidden foundation, the base, that shapes everything on top of it, like laws and culture? Well, Lévi-Strauss took that idea and ran with it, looking for a similar hidden foundation in the way we think. Then you've got his second mistress, psychoanalysis. From Freud, he grabbed onto the concept of the unconscious. He was totally captivated by this idea that our conscious actions are often just puppets, and it's our deep, unconscious mental structures that are really pulling the strings. And finally, maybe the weirdest one was geology. He started to see the world of human culture like a landscape. The hills and valleys we can see on the surface, he saw those as the product of these immense, slow-moving layers of thought hidden way down deep.
So, when you boil it all down, what is structuralism? The most important thing to remember is that it's not just some dusty old theory. Think of it more like a tool, like a special pair of X-ray glasses. It's a way to look right through the messy surface of human life to find the universal, unspoken rules that are secretly running the whole show.
Now, this idea, we're all kind of following a hidden script? Whoa, that was a huge deal back then. Absolutely revolutionary. And it set the stage for one of the biggest intellectual brawls of the century.
So in one corner, you had Jean-Paul Sartre and the existentialists, who were all about the radical freedom of the individual. They believed you create your own destiny, that you can change history. But in the other corner, you have Lévi-Strauss saying, hold on a second. He argued, we are way less free than we think. You think you're the king of your story? Nope. You're more like a pawn in a much, much bigger game.
And as you can probably guess, not everyone was a fan of this. During the huge student protests in Paris in 1968, you could find this slogan spray-painted on walls. The critique is pretty straightforward, right? If everything is just determined by some deep, unchangeable structure, then what's the point of a revolution? Does anything we do even matter?
But Levi-Strauss wasn't trying to say that human action is pointless. Not at all. He wanted to show how his structuralist lens could actually help us understand people better. It could reveal a hidden logic in customs that Westerners had just written off as primitive or savage. And his fieldwork in Brazil gave him the perfect material to work with.
Okay, so take a look at the intricate body painting of the Caduvio people. If you were an outsider, you might just see, well, a bunch of random patterns, right? You'd probably think it was just chaotic decoration, something meaningless.
But Levi-Strauss saw something completely different. He argued that these patterns were actually a complex social language. They were a way to separate the human, cultured body from the natural body of an animal. The designs literally mapped out a person's rank and social status, turning the body into a kind of text that everyone in the society could read and understand.
He found a similar kind of hidden logic at work with the Nambiquara tribe. On the surface, the chief practicing polygamy seemed totally barbaric to Westerners. But instead of just judging it, Levi-Strauss looked for the underlying structure.
And what he found was brilliant. The chief had these huge responsibilities to the whole group. So polygamy wasn't some kind of moral failing. It was a structured system of compensation for all his hard work. His wives weren't just wives. They had distinct roles that helped keep the entire group stable and functioning. It was a totally logical solution to a structural problem.
Now this is where it gets really cool. The power of structuralism isn't just about understanding tribes in the Amazon. It can actually reveal the hidden architecture inside our own most important stories and myths.
Let's try it out. We're going to take the ancient Dangun myth, the story of how Korea was founded, and see what happens when we look at it with our structuralist glasses on.
Okay, so what you're seeing here is that the myth is built on a series of basic opposites, what structuralists call binary oppositions. You've got the sky god versus the earthly beast, the sky above versus the cave below, one being endures a trial, moving towards culture, while the other flees, staying in nature. The whole point of the myth is to resolve these tensions, and that resolution, the union of sky and earth, gives birth to a whole new order.
But here's the part that will absolutely blow your mind. Levi-Strauss argued that this exact structure, this resolving of opposites between a sky being and an earth being to create something new, it shows up in foundational myths all over the world. It's the same deep grammar you find in Christianity, with the story of the Virgin Mary, an earthly woman conceiving a child through the Holy Spirit from the heaven. And that right there, that is the core of his entire project. His big point was that underneath all the incredible, beautiful diversity of human cultures, languages, and stories, there is one single, universal human mind. Just one. And it structures the world in the same basic ways, whether you're living in the Amazon rainforest or working on Wall Street.
So ultimately, what Levi-Strauss really gave us was a powerful tool for empathy. By showing us the shared logic hiding beneath all our differences, he made it clear that no single culture is better or more advanced than any other. We're all just different expressions of the same fundamental human hardware.
Which brings us all the way back to our puzzle from the beginning. Why did the great explorer hate to travel? Well, maybe it's because he wasn't interested in the exotic surface of things. For him, travel was just a way to prove an uncomfortable truth, that no matter how far you go, no matter what strange new things you see, you can never, ever escape the fundamental structures of your own mind.